Welcome to Inspire Campfire, a podcast where ordinary people tell their stories of extraordinary adventure. These are campfire stories meant to inspire the rest of us to light the fire within, get outside, follow our dreams, and return to tell our own stories. Ready? Let's strike the match.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Scott Wurtzbacher. Recently, I traveled with a group of 15 to Nepal for a once-in-a-lifetime trek to Mount Everest Base Camp. Over 12 days, we hiked through the Himalayas alongside the incredible Paralympic gold medalist Karen Darke, facing challenges, solving problems, and leaning into moments of awe, abundance, and magic. Now back from this epic journey, I'm releasing a 3-part series about the adventure. In today's episode, the second in the series, 4 of us who made the trek, myself included, reflect on the experience. We'll share why we said yes, what we encountered along the way, and how the journey is still unfolding in our everyday lives. Joining me are Keith Davis, a real estate investor from Eugene, Oregon, Clare Brown, an upland ecologist from Scotland, and Sam Van Keulen, a real estate investor based in Burgundy, France. None of us knew each other before stepping onto the trail, but we quickly found a shared spirit of adventure, and I can now say we've become the closest of friends. I'm so excited to share our journey to Everest Base Camp with you. Keith, Claire, Sam, welcome to the campfire. It's so good to see you guys again.
Thank you.
Hey, wonderful seeing everybody.
So it's literally been 1 month since we were up in the Himalayas. I think on this day 1 month ago, we were beginning our ascent back down the mountain. I'm sad jumping on here on this call today. It's so good to see all your faces. And I just can't wait to share this story. So many people have been asking me when the recap episode is coming, and this is it. Yeah, I want to start kind of in the beginning and sort of backtracking to like the anticipation phase of this adventure that we took, trekking to Mount Everest Base Camp. What was it about this experience for each of you that attracted you to it, and why did you say yes? And Claire, I want to start with you.
Well, I found out about it through my lovely friend Karen, who's our Paralympic hero, whatever. As soon as she said she was going to the Himalayas, I straight away said, "Can I come too?" And then there was some frantic mailing to you to see if I could come. And I've always wanted to go to the Himalayas. I'm in my 50s now, still hadn't been. And Karen was going, and I've always wanted to go on an adventure with Karen. I was straight in, and I was lucky enough to be able to go.
You were. I remember that. It was like there wasn't even a hesitation. She's coming. Like, Claire is in. She's doing this. Yeah. Keith, how about you?
For me, it was easy. I mean, who doesn't want to go to the Himalayas? It's majestic, and the opportunity to help somebody that it's a paraplegic attempt the same trail. What an opportunity. I was blessed to have been asked.
Yeah. And Sam?
Well, yes, I do love the mountains, and I also do love people who do adventures. Well, you definitely brought those two things together. And when I met you, I was lucky to be able to meet you prior to the trip. Then I thought, well, this will be a great trip with great people. Yeah, I was very excited to join. So it was definitely something great to look forward to, and it measured up to the expectations.
Yeah, Sam, you and me had kind of a unique experience because we were connected by another friend and guest of the podcast, Miriam Lancewood, had introduced you and I sort of through just like text message. And it was weird because I was on a trip to Switzerland last year, and it just so happened that you were like 10 minutes away from where I was, and it just worked out that you and I were able to meet up for coffee. It's so crazy how things happen. But I mean, if I remember correctly, you and I met for coffee, and then like within 24 hours, you texted me back and said, "Hey, I want to come to base camp."
Yes, that was practically how it went. And it was absolutely great to meet you, to know who was organizing this. And you coming from one side of the world and meeting each other in Geneva, that was very special. And then I had no doubt of joining.
Yeah, guys. So there was so much about this trip, like, and just in the preparation phase for it. I mean, it's not something to be taken lightly. It was an aggressive hike. It took a lot of physicality. And so I guess I'm curious, like for each of you guys, did you have any particular expectations about the trip, like going in, any sort of fears or hopes or kind of like anything that you were sort of anticipating on the front end before we went? Keith, let's start with you.
Well, for me, it was, my sister had done this trek back in 1988. So I was very much looking forward to doing the trek and then comparing notes with her and, 40 something years later. Yeah, that was something I was very much looking forward to. Probably the one thing, and nobody really knows until you've been to high altitude, is how's your body going to react to that? If there was anything I was concerned about, it was that. Turned out to be pretty much a non-event for me, but it was definitely in the back of my mind. You just don't know how your body's going to behave.
I feel like that's such a good point because I think that is like that. And I experienced the same thing, like going to Mount Kilimanjaro. That was like my first high altitude experience before this. And I remember like the anticipation and the concern about what it might do before you know how your body's going to react. It's real. So I want, like, Keith, like how, like, what was that like for you, that sort of anticipation up front about the altitude?
I'd been up to 14.5 before, so that had never really bothered me. I mean, you can feel altitude, but, adding another 4,000 feet, that's significant. I think I've been lucky in life that I've got a good set of lungs and a strong heart and that kind of stuff. I wasn't overly concerned, but it's something you just don't know until you do it.
Yeah. And just to stay with you for a minute, Keith, like what was your kind of like trekking mountain and experience leading up to this trip, and sort of like how prepared did you feel for it?
Not as prepared as I'd like. I didn't do as much homework as I had desired to do. Wound up very busy and a couple of unexpected events shortly before going. So my homework was limited, to say the least.
Well, you showed up and you did the work when we got there. So you were clearly you were ready. Sam, let's go to you. Did you have any particular expectations, any sort of fears or hopes?
Well, like Keith mentioned, definitely the altitude and the lack of oxygen is a fact. Well, I do quite a lot of mountain hiking, not at this altitude, but I felt kind of confident. So I see, well, bring it on. And I was more concerned about the weather. I thought March in the Himalayas would be crazy cold, but it turned out the weather was definitely not a problem. Yeah, I underestimated the altitude, I felt bad. It was in Namche Bazaar, must have been around 10,000 feet.
Yeah.
And I had a day where I definitely felt like a bad hangover. So I was a little bit disappointed in myself to feeling this altitude sickness. But yeah, after the day, it went pretty good. So that was the only problem I had.
Yeah, so we'll clarify. It was a hangover without the drinking.
Absolutely, yeah. It was only drinking lemon tea. Yes.
Yeah. The famous ginger lemon honey tea. So you didn't feel good that one day, but the acclimatization kind of staying in one place, because we did have a rest day there in Namche Bazaar. So after that day, you kind of started to feel better.
Absolutely. So yes, the experience of the guide to do a rest day there, I might have felt it like a bit of a over concern prior to the trip, but once over there, I was definitely glad to do a rest day to get used to the altitude.
Yeah. And Sam, what was like your previous experience with this sort of a trek or hike and how prepared did you feel?
Well, I did some modest hiking. I spent the winter in the Alps, and there I did some hiking, and I did before the trip around the Mont Blanc, the TMB. I hiked on Corsica, the GR20. That was a tough hike, but not such a high altitude. So the high altitude was definitely something new for me. I absolutely felt it.
Yeah, got it. Well, Claire, let's do the same question with you. Any particular expectations that you had about the trip, fears, hopes?
So I had the same concerns about altitude, and I was fine, actually. I did, at the highest altitude, I was a little bit breathless, maybe a little bit headachy when I woke up in the morning. That was a concern, and I brought the meds with me, and I did take them quite early on, and I ended up with this massive headache. and decided to just not take them. And I was fine. One of my other concerns was these 15 people I've never met before are all being thrown together. And would we get on? Would we not get on? And we actually got on really well. And everybody brought something different to the table.
Yeah.
Whole range of different personalities, different backgrounds, different careers from lots of different places in the world. And it worked. And we had some challenges. And it was just incredible how everybody pulled together and got on. And just some lovely, lovely people. So it's a pleasure to spend that time with them. So that was much easier than expected.
Yeah, actually, I think this is a good time, just since you brought it up, because, doing this as part of a group with 15 people, like obviously that was a huge part of the whole experience. And I think it'd be great to just kind of talk about that. And Sam, I want to ask you, like, for you, what was it like? You kind of came into this not knowing anybody at all in the group. What was it like for you to do this with a group of people? And I know you and I kind of talked on the hike about, like, what was it going to be like to hike with such a large group? Because I think a lot of the stuff that you've done previously in your adventuring is with like smaller groups or even solo.
Yes, that's correct. But well, I knew you, at least I met you, and I knew the reputation of Karen Darke. Yeah, the fact Karen Darke is going, that was definitely a great fact and an inspiring fact. And I thought, if you go hiking, you like hiking, you meet other people who like hiking. Yeah. So I was pretty confident of meeting the group, and I thought you will meet likewise people. And we went on really well. It was a really nice group. All good.
It was really fun, the new friendships that were made. Keith, you and I we ended up being roommates for a lot of the trip, and we got to know each other really, really well. And I'm so grateful for the time that you and I had together. What was the people side like for you, Keith?
I was concerned about how the different dynamics would go between the different personalities going in, but this trip was just fabulous. I enjoyed everybody. What a wonderful group of people. Blessed to have been able to do it with amazing people. I would imagine that I'm going to stay in contact with every one of these individuals for the rest of my life.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we've got our WhatsApp thread that's still going a month later. We're still, I don't think that the high has worn off yet, at least for me. I think we're all still kind of up there, which is pretty cool. So I'd love to talk a little bit about, just so for listeners, kind of some of the things that people can expect experientially. I want to help listeners kind of understand what it's like to hike Everest Base Camp. So I'll go through each one of you guys. If you could kind of share something about the experience itself that you think like listeners might want to know about, just day to day, like what does it entail? Like how many miles did we hike each day? Like anything that you want to touch on. And Keith, we'll stay with you. Like, how would you describe this hike to somebody that has never done it before and is intrigued by it?
I've done several challenging hikes before, so that kind of biases me, but it's a very challenging hike. It's broken over a significant number of days. The altitude is definitely a factor. The one thing that I underestimated and probably didn't know anywhere near enough about was the Khumbu cough. That turned out to be a real thing, and as far as I know, I'm still dealing with that a month later.
What is the Khumbu cough?
Well, it has to do with dust on the trail, cold weather, and the drying out of your throat. So I probably was a day behind in masking up my face by putting a buff over my nose and mouth to keep the dust, and by recirculating the air, you're getting warmer air to your throat. But I think the damage had probably already been done, and best I can guess, I'm still actually trying to recover from that. So
it was a very dusty trail. That was actually kind of surprising to me. Like a minor not a minor detail because it's affected us all, but yeah. Sam, what are some things that come to mind for you if you were describing this trek to others that haven't done it before?
Well, what was something very specific to this trek? I've been hiking in mountains before. Mountains, I always like them, the views, the massiveness of nature. Something that really struck me on this hike, it was a different dimension and some metaphor of life that is like climbing the mountain that really came clearly to mind. And like said Keith, it is a tough hike, We were lucky to have pretty good weather conditions, but if it's colder or raining, then it's definitely tough. And if you take it step by step, you can achieve great things by going to base camp. And that is like in life. If you have a project, you will find obstacles, but if you take it step by step, then you will definitely get there. Yeah, that vision I got clearly of this trip. So that it's hard, but you get a beautiful reward.
I love that. I want to come back to that a little bit later in the episode here. I think that one thing that you said was just sort of step by step and day by day. And I think that's the thing. Like, I think if you just look at this as like how far we had to go and, you know, how much altitude we had to accomplish, like if you try to think about all of that, I think it could get very, very overwhelming. It literally is like one step at a time. It's like, okay. And it's not even where are we going to end up at the end of the day today? It's almost like, where are we going to end up for lunch? It's like, you know, the first half of the hike in a day is like, you're kind of thinking about that. And, you know, we're really like day by day, hour by hour, step by step. And it's more enjoyable that way too. At least it was for me, just to kind of be fully present. And it's, you know, maybe we'll come back to that. I mean, base camp itself is awesome, but it's not really about base camp, right? It's really more about the journey.
Absolutely.
So Claire, how about you? How would you describe this trek to people that haven't done it before?
I think you're going from where you fly in at Lukla, you're 2,300 meters above sea level. I don't work in feet very well, but so I have to convert that into feet.
Yeah.
But you're from that altitude, you're very much within woodland and trees, and just going up through the different altitudes, you see these changes in vegetation from sort of pine forests and rhododendron forests, and then birch, and then like sort of scrub and pasture, and totally different, quite sort of tundra type vegetation. And eventually you're into scree and rock, and that for me was just amazing. And I think anyone could appreciate that, even if they're not into ecology or whatever, just those changes, because you're gaining so much altitude. And also what you guys were saying about just taking it day by day and just like grabbing each day and just loving whatever it offers, whether that's like a load of yaks or thousands of mules or some weird bird that you haven't seen before, or some stunning views. Just the scenery is just off the scale. And I mean, obviously the UK is a small island and we have some mountains, but they're very small mountains. And just the scale of everything there, which is maybe not as unusual to you in the US, but for somebody from this small island, I was just bowled over by it. And there were a few points where I was just in bits, I want to go back.
I have to just interject there for a second, because I think like one of the biggest things that like as friends have asked me about the trip, what you just touched on. I mean, this thing that I experienced was being in these valleys, looking at these just absolutely just towering mountains.
A wall of snow.
Oh my gosh.
And sometimes you couldn't see the top of it because there was clouds. So you're thinking, well, where is the top?
Yeah. And you have this like overwhelming desire to, like I did, this overwhelming desire to want to capture the moment. And so I'd pull out my phone and I'd try to take a picture. And then I'd look at my phone and feel disappointment. Like, nope, that's not it. Let me try again. Take another picture. Nope, that's not it. Take another picture. Nope, that's not. And then you realize like you can't capture it in a picture. You have to experience it for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. You have to go and experience it.
Yeah, 100%. Claire, we got to talk about Lukla, because we need to touch on that, because when we talked about like fears and expectations, it has been said that Lukla is the most dangerous airport in the world. Some people like, well-meaning have said to me before the trip, like, hey, have you watched the videos on the flight to Lukla? Are you familiar with the fact that it's the most dangerous airport in the world? And I can tell you, like, I chose not to look at anything. I just wanted to like get on the plane and judge for myself. So I'm curious. And so there was a little bit of fear for me about this so-called dangerous flight to Lukla, but I'm curious for you guys, like, what the flight to Lukla and back from Lukla was like for each of you guys.
I was good with it, actually. I thought once we're on the plane, it's either going to land or turn around and go back or have a mishap. But the statistics, okay, maybe it is one of the most dangerous airports, but lots of planes get there, and very, 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 very occasionally one doesn't. And it's high up. The terrain is difficult. The approach is difficult. The pilot has to be able to see it to land on it. And we were very lucky the morning we went out that we had this tiny, tiny weather window, and we managed to get up there. But once we were on the plane and coming back as well, I was okay with it.
Sam, any worries about the flight leading up to it or taking the flight?
I felt kind of excited about it. I was aware of the reputation you just mentioned, but you say, like say Claire, the statistics of the safety of flying, that kept me calm. But it was a bumpy ride, and it is a funny airport, and it's definitely different than something else. But yeah, I found it a nice experience. It was definitely more exciting than frightening.
Yeah, Keith, you want to add anything about the flight?
Oh, I have to agree with Sam. It was more exciting than frightening.
Yeah.
I was not concerned about it. All the pilots had to be specially certified for that airport. Weather was the big concern for me. Were we going to have to turn around and go back to Kathmandu and not get there that day?
Yeah,
we were very fortunate. We got there that day. As far as I know, we were the only flight that made it out of Kathmandu and made it up to Lukla that day. And on our return, we were one of the few flights that made it back to Kathmandu.
We had a bubble of magic just around us. I mean, so many different things that went on.
Have you seen the weather up there now? Been snowing a lot.
Yeah, we really lucked out. Really incredible. So yeah, I think that to summarize the Lukla thing for me personally, like, I'm glad that I didn't listen to the hype. I'm glad I didn't watch any of the videos. Like, I thought that the flight was just fun. It was exciting. And, granted, it was great weather. We didn't have any mishaps, but I thought it was great. Now, I will say, like, once you're off the plane and you're looking at that runway, it's a pretty impressive sight to see this angled runway, and as short as it is. That was pretty cool. So guys, like, what did it feel like for you coming home, like, and maybe even coming down from base camp, coming home? Like, what kinds of things like were going on for you, like in that immediate sort of, we did it, we made it to base camp, and now we're kind of headed back down? Claire, what about you? Let's start with you.
Well, my journey was a little bit different, because after coming back to Kathmandu from base camp, myself and Karen and one of the other members of the party then spent a couple of days in Kathmandu and then went to Bhutan for 10 days, which was amazing. But half of us got food poisoning quite badly whilst we were there. So that was a bit of a strange one. So, but I guess what you're really meaning is coming home, isn't it? And what you kind of feel, or maybe feel differently when you get back home again. And I would say there are lots of little trivial things in life that maybe you worry about, which are not important. And there's a whole host of things that seem to bother me less than when I left home to go on the trip. And also there's just thinking about, well, what do you want to do in life? And I, like Keith, lost some family members quite recently. I lost my mum a year ago, and that it was difficult and sort of turned everything upside down a little bit. And this was another layer on top of that. And it just, sometimes if you sort of step away from your daily trappings, it just makes you reappraise things and think, well, what do I want to do next? What do I want to do the rest of my life? What things really make me happy? So I'm still thinking on that. But yeah, I would say I'm slightly different from when I went away.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I love the reflection and the processing, especially like this, it sounds like there was healing, but there's also like thinking about like what's going to come next for me. I'm curious, like, did much of that happen on the trail, or was it just, did the trail kind of give you the space to start thinking about it on the way back?
I think both things. I would say I'm generally pretty rubbish about being present, and I tend to be a planner, and I'm always thinking, oh, I need to do that and that and that and that and that. And it stops me being in the present. And I was pleasantly surprised how I was able to be in the present. And I think it's helped by just the amazing surroundings and being with a really decent bunch of people as well. And I just had the headspace to be able to do something that I don't normally do very well. And that really helped.
I think that's really profound that you just said, like, becoming really present helped you think about what's ahead, like get more clear on what's ahead. I think that's really cool. Yeah. Hey, Sam, how about you?
Coming home was, for me, like for Claire, like it was a couple of weeks after the end of base camp. Really, yes, stood out for me in Nepal, Kathmandu, and hiking to base camp is like the spirit of the people, the sincere, willing to help, even if many of them are really poor compared to our standards. So gave me a different vision of the value of money. And that is something that I took home with me. And that's something to be grateful about.
So Sam, just to touch on that, because to keep it brief, I cut out some of the introduction that you sent to me, but you are a real estate investor. But what you added to that is that your hope is really just to make enough money to be able to travel the world.
Yes, exactly.
So it's this, simple life, and you've done this beautifully in your life as you've kind of created this life for yourself where you don't need excess in your daily life. But you do enjoy this ability to be able to travel. And I just wondered if you could just touch on that.
Yes, I've been periods in my life that I was seeking about my purpose, and I have no kids. So I have a lot of freedom, a lot of possibility to go where I want to go. And at some point I found out that discovering new countries, meeting new people, that is something I really, really enjoy. Then somebody said, if you do what you like, do it more, and then you have a great life. And I'm absolutely enjoying that, and it's my real estate investments giving me some passive income, so I can do that. And
I love that. Thanks. I mean, we went on this epic trip together. This is a recap episode talking about the fun that we had and the learnings that we had. Ultimately, this podcast is about helping people listen to the voice inside that calls us to adventure. And that's a lot of what we're doing here today is like, we're sharing this story so that others can hear that. And it's really inspiring for you to hear that from you, that you've put a priority on, experiences and travel. And that's what you've been, the life that you've been able to create. And I think that's really awesome. So thank you for sharing that. Keith, specific to kind of coming back down and, kind of getting to that place where it's like time to go home. What was that like for you? Sort of those initial days of finishing the trek?
You get to base camp and you've reached your goal of the trip, and then you're going to turn around for 9 days or so. On the way up, I'm enjoying these majestic views as we go along, just taking it all in. And on my way back down, I'm like, in 3 days, I'm not going to be in this environment. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to miss it. It's just so awe-inspiring. And as I think Claire said earlier, I mean, those mountains are huge. I've been to Colorado, with the exception of being up to Alaska and Denali, which is kind of a solar mountain out in the middle of nowhere. Being in the Himalayas is unlike anything else I've ever experienced. You're sitting at 18,000 feet, and you're still looking up an entire mountain in all directions. It's like, pictures can't do it justice.
Keith, I want to touch on just sort of, some things that kind of went on as part of the trip that were sort of specific to our group. And I'll stay with you, Keith. I mean, you had a very specific experience that happened between the time that you signed up to do this trip and then actually reaching base camp, and it became a huge part of your trip. And I think we kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, but would you mind talking a little bit about honoring of your sister?
Yeah, absolutely. This was all about helping Karen and getting to base camp. And then less than a month before departing for Nepal, my sister passed away, which was, like I had said earlier, something I was hoping to share with her was this trip. And then 12 days later, my father passed away. So I was dealing with a lot of emotional trauma, so to speak.
Yeah.
And, it's still tough for me. I'm back. I've had all these wonderful experiences. I'm sad that I won't get the opportunity to share that with my sister. and compare notes. I think that would have been a beautiful thing. But on the other hand, I was able to get to base camp, honor my sister. I carried her picture the whole way. I had an amazing support from everybody in this group. I had a goal of duplicating a picture she had made back in 1988 at base camp. Wound up trying to find a Diet Pepsi. My sister had hauled a Diet Pepsi all the way across from southern Nepal all the way to base camp just so she could drink it there. Learned to find out you can't find a Diet Pepsi in Kathmandu. I didn't anticipate that. I was like, oh, no problem. I'll just pick up a can when I get to Kathmandu. No, that just didn't happen. So I had to do the best I could. I got a Pepsi bottle. I was able to share my loss with the group, and everybody came around and helped me actually create that picture because I didn't have the proper pants. I didn't have the right sunglasses. I didn't have a watch, all this stuff that were and white socks. I mean, a lot of this came from you, Scott, and I'm eternally grateful. And the recreated picture turned out fantastic. So I was very blessed to have made it up there and honored her in that way. And
it would be fun if we could show the her picture and the you picture in the show notes for people to be able to see. That'd be fun. I'm curious for you, just if you could share, like, what was it? I mean, it was a group of 15 people, and there was a rally behind this mission to recreate this photo for you. What was that like for you to have all of these people kind of supporting you in this cause?
I knew early on that it was a special group, but as you're getting closer and closer to base camp and the amount of support, I don't think without exception, there were people that acknowledged my sister's loss to me along the way. And everybody knew what I was going through, and they were so supportive, which just amazing. I am still touched on how special this group is, and grateful for, the hugs, the space when I maybe needed it, and just help recreating it. It was just beautiful. It's a moment I will cherish forever. And it was very fleeting. It's amazing how fast you get to base camp. And I don't know, we would spend an hour there.
Yeah.
And it seemed like a blink of an eye.
Yeah.
It
is pretty wild that, we do this Everest Base Camp trek and we spend an hour there when we get there and then turn around and go back. Pretty cool. So just talking about some of the things that happened on the trip, I'm doing three series. I had an episode the previous episode was with Olga, connected with Travel Nepal Himalayas treks, and she's talked a little bit about Nepal and the mountains, and today we're recapping our experience. The third episode is going to be with Karen, and we're going to talk about her experience, and I'm sure that some of the stuff that came up with her bike is going to come up on that episode. I'm sure we'll cover that in detail, but I think it's worth touching on that because it was such a big part of the trip for us. And Claire, you were her roommate for the majority of the trips. I wonder, like, for listeners, could you give us a quick recap of some of the ongoings that happened with Karen and her bike?
Okay, so I never doubted, by the way, that Karen would get to base camp because she's amazing. I just thought it would happen. It would work out. But anyway, the mode of transport, or one of the modes of transport, was this fat bike, which is basically a sort of off-road mountain trike with chunky tires. And from the moment we arrived at the airport in Scotland with it, it was interesting trying to check that in. Can you imagine the airport staff were not a bit bemused by it all? So to get it to Kathmandu in the first place was a challenge. And then it arrived at the airport in Kathmandu, and I think Badri was the guide was like, oh my goodness, she's not going to go in the aeroplane, and there's a whole list of concerns. Anyway, we managed to get it up there, and unfortunately, when we got to Lukla, we found that one of the axle pins was missing, and it's made of the right grade of steel, so it's not going to it's going to survive the off-road experience, and the metal's not going to shear or anything. Anyway, it was missing. We looked high and low for it, couldn't find it. And luckily, somebody who Karen had known previously from Scotland happened to be at Lukla Airport, and he managed to use his local contacts and source what we call in the UK threaded bar. It's like a steel bar, but it's a different grade of steel. So along the way, he managed to source some of this and bolts, and we made this sort of makeshift pin to allow the bike to work. But these sort of ongoing mechanical problems recurred really the whole of the journey, on the way up and on the way back again. And it was challenging, but people appeared and helped. Group members all chipped in. So Keith and Sam, who are on this call, they were the mechanics, and Colin, the local guy, he was pulling all sorts of strings and making parts appear and helping fix it. And I think, yes, it was difficult, but it actually pulled everybody together, and it gelled the group even more, because there was this added challenge that we weren't expecting. But everybody just kind of went with it and made it happen. And the bike did what it needed to do. And there are parts where the trail's really rough and Karen had to go in this sort of basket carry arrangement, which isn't really what she's about. She's about cycling and stuff. But a lot of the way she did manage to use the bike. And that's thanks to everybody pulling together to make that happen. I think that's just incredible. That's one of the most beautiful things about the whole journey, that we had that challenge and that everybody sort of stepped up.
Yeah, it was insane. I'm excited to kind of go into a little bit more depth with with Karen on some of that. But I'm curious, like, you being her roommate, like, what was that like for you and your like interactions with her?
Oh, it was lovely. I mean, I've known Karen for about 30 odd years. I didn't know her before her climbing accident. I think I first met her sort of 2 or 3 years after her climbing accident. I used to do a lot of kayaking. I grew up kayaking. When I first met Karen, one of the things she wanted to try and do was to get on the water. So I did quite a bit of kayaking with her back then. And then over the years, we've not always been in the same place, but we've kept in touch and we've met up and done things. And I've got back on the water again recently. So I've done a bit of kayaking with her in the last year and seen her a bit more. And it was really nice, because she's busy, I'm busy. It was really nice to spend all this time together and every night just having all sorts of conversations about the day and all sorts of things. That was really precious.
Yeah.
And as I say, I never doubted that she would get to base camp anyway. That was a given as far as I was concerned. I mean, the reason I said I wanted to come on the trip was because I wanted to do that with her. And I'm so pleased that I did, and very fortunate that we were able to spend that time together. Really, really precious.
Yeah, and I know you were a huge support and encourager for her in those moments, I think, with you guys together. Sam, I want to ask you, so you and Keith both you did play mechanic a lot of the way. I mean, you guys were integral to like kind of keeping the bike functioning. But I'm curious for you, like, as you were sort of witnessing this unfolding, especially like once we got to Lukla, we discovered this pin has gone missing. Like, what's going through your mind as all of this is sort of unfolding?
I often go mountain biking, and I've got a yearly mountain bike trip in the Alps with my cousin. And my cousin, he is like having loads of stock of parts and like whatever happens to your bike, he can fix it in 5 minutes, and then he's got all the parts you need. So I kind of get used to, if you go on a bike trip, you've got a lot of parts and stuff ready to repair whatever happens. And then with Karen, she has this magical spirit and confidence that things will go well. So this important axle parts that went missing, yeah, of course it made unable to keep the bike going. But somehow with this Colin guy who appeared like out of nowhere, finding solutions, it was absolutely mind-blowing to see how Karen dealt with these problems and how always there are solutions. And also you, Scott, you mentioned Mark Twain's quote, like all the worries I have, and which most of them never happen.
Yeah.
Those combined with the spirit of Karen, it is like, yeah, have trust and take it step by step instead of worrying about everything that could go happen. So my mechanical part was, well, a little part, but it was all very, very inspiring.
Yeah, it was everybody on. So it's you know, I don't know what forces brought this group of 15 people together, right? But we all came together, and everybody played some role in the success of this trip. And it's just, but beyond that, I mean, the perfect weather that we had, these people that just magically appeared, which we've kind of touched on a little bit. I mean, it was such a magical experience. I really appreciate y'all sharing. I'm curious, as we kind of get towards the end of our time, I'd love to talk with each of you guys about, like, now that we've been back for a month, as you're sort of reflecting, if there's been any sort of transformations that you feel like you've experienced. And it could be anything from, maybe how you've been able to connect more deeply with nature, or any moments of awe that you felt, or maybe how your heart opened on this trip. Can you talk a little bit about any sort of transformation that you felt this trip gave you? And Keith, I want to start with you.
This trip, like I've alluded to earlier, I mean, the views are majestic. The people are wonderful. At the end, I got home and I want to do more of this. I'm trying to retire from my real estate gig. And it's like, what do you want to do next? And I love being outdoors. I love being in nature. That's kind of my church in this world. That's the spiritual part of me. I get out there and I'm in awe of nature in itself. I try to live now in the moment and not for the moment. So you get out there, and I'm in the Himalayas, and you try and take your time to just look around and absorb it all. Yeah, just enjoy every moment, because this life is short. It's precious. It could be over any moment. You just don't know, especially as you get older and you realize that your clock is ticking and you're getting closer to the end of your time here. Yeah, these experiences are just to be treasured. And now I used to say no to things in the past. I'm too busy. I got to do this. I got to do that. Now I look for an excuse to say yes.
Love
just
that.
Go do it.
The excuse to say yes. Love it. Sam, what about you? What kind of transformation did you experience from this trip?
Well, I just heard you say that you don't know what kind of force put this group together. But I think I know, actually, because you are that force. I think you are a guy who can have very clear goals. I can be more like a bit go with the flow. And you made me see, like, if you have a clear goal and you put efforts in getting there, you can simply get there. So thanks to you for that.
That's kind of you. I appreciate that, Sam. I'm curious, like, so how will you be integrating any of this from our trek into your daily life?
Well, it was what I a bit touched on earlier, the spirit of the Nepalese people, and the happiness they can provide and they show with so modest means. We here in Western Europe and in America, it's a bit the same. We were all counting in money and running after money. And it is definitely important, and our society can't do without, but it's not the only thing. And that's something that I definitely got aware of in Nepal.
Claire, how about you? Transformation that you experienced?
I think be present. I know I can be present, and various points in that journey where I was very present and quite emotionally moved by the place we were in. I think not to stress about the little things. And from a career point of view, I'd like to re-engage in my ecology career. And I'm putting a job application for something, actually, but
nice.
I'm actively looking to try and resume something that I used to do. And that's been paused for various reasons, including being a mum, but other things in life as well. And it's just pursue what you love and make it happen. So I'm working on that.
So what's kind of fun about that is I remember specifically having some conversation with you well before the trip, like about sort of intentions and things. And I think one of the things that you talked about was like almost a concern about disconnecting and being present. And it was kind of what you wanted to do on this trip, was to kind of break away from that not being present. So to hear you say that being present was kind of what you got out of it, it sounds like a real win.
And I was in a place where I was able to do that. I was in an environment where I was able to do that. And as I was saying, just being removed from your normal life and the place that you live. I think sometimes to go to this amazing, stunning. But I'm not particularly religious, but I found it quite a spiritual journey and a spiritual place. And yeah, it's helped me in a lot of ways.
So do you think you can bring that back to your daily life? That kind of that being
yeah, I think I can, and I think there are changes I've already made, and there are others that I'm working on. So yeah.
Awesome. Guys, I don't think we can break here until we just have a quick little conversation about the porters and the guides. Because when you go on an Everest Base Camp trek, I mean, we feel this great sense of accomplishment when we reach base camp. When we get back down, we feel like this just unbelievable sense of, wow, we did this. But we had this amazing crew of people that were there for us and kept us safe, and they carried our gear. Does anybody want to say anything just for listeners to kind of help bring some perspective on the support crew that we had to help us get up? Claire, let's start with you.
As I understand it, all, if not most of the porters came from the same village, and is it a 2-day trek from Lukla? They're not Sherpas, they're Nepali, but they're from a rural community. And most of them, I think, were from the same family.
That's right.
They were either cousins, brothers, related in some way. Not all of them, but they were either from the same village, or most of them were related in some way. And they were just phenomenal. They were lovely. They worked incredibly hard, and they didn't argue. There was never any discussion about who needed to do what. They just seemed to just read each other's minds almost. And Karen had some additional help with the bike and the basket and everything. And I mean, she's just a beacon of positivity and loveliness anyway. And they just loved her. And the relationship that Karen had with them by the end was just a beautiful thing. And they carry, so one porter carries 2-person stuff. So that could be up to a 30 kilo load.
Yeah.
And they took it in quick turnabout to carry Karen as well. So she was heavier than that. They're not big guys, actually, but they're just incredibly strong and fit, very sure-footed, just really beautiful people. And just the way they work with it, they obviously love each other, and they kind of looked after each other as well. And that relationship with Karen, it just, feeling a bit tearful thinking about it, actually. It's really beautiful. And lovely guys. And they partied hard when we had
They did. We had a blast. It was so fun to see them just let loose.
They
it was awesome.
partied pretty hard.
Yeah.
So that was good to see.
Keith, how about you? You want to add anything about the guides and the porters?
What an amazing people the Nepalis are. That's, not just our porters and guides, but the people in general. We live in such a consumption society, and by our standards, they have absolutely nothing. You've got guides and porters walking around with shoes that have holes in them, clothes that are tattered, and not one complaint from anybody. Even when one of them injured their finger, no complaining, no whining about it, just dealt with it and continued on. The entire trip, I felt like I'm not used to being catered to and spoiled like that, but anytime something came up, if a bag needed to be lifted and they were there, they wanted to grab it and just do it.
Yeah.
I'm used to carrying my own bags, even when I go to a nice hotel, like, no, I got it. I need the exercise.
Yeah.
But what a caring and sweet and kind group of individuals. You don't need material things to be happy in life, and they make the best of the lot that they've got. It's beautiful.
They showed us that for sure. Sam, anything to add?
Well, it's absolutely true, and I feel it the same, like say Claire and Keith. Yeah, they definitely spread a beautiful spirit, and that's great to witness. And I hope I took a little bit of that spirit home. Yeah, that was absolutely great.
Love it. I want to do a quick rapid fire here on just if somebody is thinking about doing an Everest Base Camp trek, what's like one piece of advice you have for them? Claire.
Well, I did a load of hill walking leading up to it. My training was just walking. I thought, we're walking, so I'm just going to walk. So do loads of walking, and that will help you feel fit when you're out there.
Perfect. Sam?
Yes, do a bit of working and don't worry.
Don't worry. Love that. That's
Live
great.
it.
Keith?
Yeah, I like that, Sam. Yeah, do your homework. The number one thing that I've gotten from it, because I'm still dealing with it, as best I can tell, is prepare yourself for the Khumbu and mask up early. because I'd like to think that if I had done that earlier, I might not be paying quite the price. But I also, it's not going to dissuade me from trying to do it again.
Love it. All right. So guys, at some point, I mean, this was such an epic adventure. I mean, we got Karen Darke safely up and down from Lukla up to base camp, back down. I mean, we had so much fun. We had all these relationships, all this amazing things that happened between the weather and then some of the adversities that we had to struggle with. I mean, this is Hollywood movie quality stuff. And at some point, Hollywood's going to pick up on the story of our adventure and they're going to want to make a movie about us. So I want to know from each of you, when they make our movie, who's going to be the Hollywood actor that's going to play you in the movie? So Claire, we're going to start with you.
Only because I share a birthday with her, although she's a little bit older than me. I'm not claiming to be as pretty as she is, but Julia Roberts, just because we share a birthday.
I love it. Okay. That sounds really good. All right, Keith, we're going to go to you next.
Daniel Craig for me.
Daniel Craig. All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens next here, Sam.
Yeah, I thought about exactly the same. So you can only play one character. So
we're going to have to duke it out here. We're going to clone Daniel Craig, but it's the perfect choice for both of you guys. So we're going to have to get a cloned version of Daniel Craig. And Sam, I want you to bring it home with the movie. And even if this is just, you as the main character, because we talked about this in advance and I was kind of tipped off, but what's your movie about this adventure going to be called, Sam?
Well, I would suggest to call it James Vagabond. With Clare Brown as a James Bond girl.
Oh, there you go. I love it. Oh my gosh, you guys, I miss you all so much. This call has been so much fun. I feel like I got a little bit of time here to go back to Nepal, back to Everest Base Camp, and just appreciate being able to spend some time with each one of you guys. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much, Scott, for making it happen. It was fantastic.
Yeah, thank you guys. And for those listening, I hope you've been inspired today as much as I have. I hope this Everest Base Camp story has encouraged you to listen to the voice inside that calls you to adventure, because we want to hear your story next. If you have a story to tell or just need a nudge to create one, please send me an email. We'd also appreciate it if you'd help us spread the word by leaving a review and sharing or tagging Inspire Campfire in your social media. And until next time, I want to encourage you to get outside. Thanks for listening. Claire, Sam, Keith, thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you all. Great seeing everyone.